I don't even think that someone needs to do an MBA to be a good brand builder.
India's startup wave has only recently started. What is your take on Dhanda versus a brand in India?
Coincidentally, I met a small town entrepreneur recently and he runs successful businesses, couple of hundreds of crores. And when I met him, he said that, यार धंधा बहुत बना लिया, brand बनाना है.
Now comes the holy grail of everything. How do you sell it?
What is that core that's unlikely to change? Because that's where you can build a solid business. I will actually make scarcity a kind of a marketing thing rather than flooding the market with it. You almost take a certain pride in saying that, oh, I just watch Netflix. I just watch this English series. You are condescending to say a Big Boss, an Indian Idol, but that's what your consumer is watching. If your consumer is watching that, you better watch it and figure out what is working for them.
Welcome to the Decoding Brands podcast. I am Anurag and I've been running a channel called Business with Bansal for the last 2 years or so. In this channel, I talk about everything related to brands, marketing and advertisements. I started this podcast with the sole reason of talking to young and aspirational entrepreneurs in India and give them a true flavor of what it really means to build a brand in the country. In today's episode, I have a very special guest with me. We spoke about how a dhanda is fundamentally different from a brand, understood how different categories of Indians spend so differently, and finally we built a shoe company together, spoke about all his insights. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I enjoyed while recording it. Welcome to the Decoding Brands podcast. I'm your host Anurag Bansal and today is the very first episode of this show. I'm happy to announce that this show is now supported by the Zerodha Collective Network. Today with me, I have a very special guest. Gurudev Prasad is a brand builder and brand marketer who has about 20 years of experience in brand marketing. Gurudev has one of the coolest jobs in town. He talks to people for a living. He understands, analyzes people's conversations and makes a lot of money out of it. We'll understand the rest from Gurudev, so let's hear it from him himself.
Hey,
awesome, Gurudev.
Thanks, Anurag, for inviting me. Everything that you said about me is right, except the fact that I make a lot of money. So I run a brand building firm called BusyBeeBrands, and I work with some of the fastest growing startups and the VCs and the founders in answering some of the questions that can help unlock the levers of the business. So primarily, my job is to kind of find answers, and the answers come from stakeholders. A big set of stakeholders is actually consumers. So on an average for last 10 years or so, we've been speaking to around 1,000 odd consumers every year. What also makes this interesting is that we have a rule that we don't repeat categories. So if I worked on a category, I don't repeat that category. So from cryptocurrency to chai, say to fintech to fast fashion, we've worked on 40 odd categories in last 10 years. Now the problem is we are running out of categories. But by virtue of not repeating categories, what is happening is that I would know a consumer from different angles. I would know a consumer when he's planning to make an investment, when he's evaluating schools for his kid, when he's looking to buy a property and so on, right? So that's essentially what we do, and fascinating ride so far. If you look at consultants, they're almost like the new pub in the town.
Sure.
So when a new pub opens up in the town for 6 months, everyone goes, that's a cool place to hang out and everything, and someone else comes along and then, the crowd starts moving there. So for us, the idea was that how do we stay relevant over a long period of time? Now that I've been in a decade in this business, and I realized there are few things to that. One is, how do we make ourselves uncomfortable with each project? So for example, if I worked on a project, I don't want to work with a brand in a similar category, because a lot of it will become cut, copy, paste, right? It doesn't really help us. So the idea was that, generally when I was trying to, quit my job and I was a good performer, the organization was trying to retain me and they said that you're too young to be doing this. And I counterintuitively thought that India is seeing a new wave of startups, entrepreneurs who are young, and probably they would be excited or open to work with younger people like us than consultants who just walk into a room and have this position of authority just because they have experience.
Fair enough.
So we approach everything with a beginner's mindset. We want to be uncomfortable. In fact, on every project, I get someone from the industry to work with us just to play devil's advocate. So they're constantly questioning us, challenging us so that we don't get into our comfort zone, right? And that has worked for us. So, 40 odd categories and talking to so many consumers, working with some phenomenal founders and VCs. So that's essentially what we've been able to do to keep ourselves relevant. Yeah.
Awesome. So what I hear is, if you're working with a fintech brand, you probably get someone on board who is an expert in fintech, who's worked with fintech, and sort of play a devil's advocate there to help you understand more nuances around the industry, around the company you're working with, around whatever people are involved, consumers, stakeholders, etc.
Absolutely.
So that you get a deeper understanding of it.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great strategy. Gurudev, so you work with startups, brands, etc. And I've been reading your LinkedIn posts. I've been following you for a while. We've been in conversation. So I understand that you already mentioned that India's startup wave has only recently started. In the last 10 odd years, we've only seen startups mushroom in India. Traditionally, India has been a Dhanda country of sorts, if I could put it that way. What is your take on Dhanda versus a brand in India? Because largely speaking, a traditional India really looks at a traditional business or a Dhanda per se. And the new India is now looking to build a brand or looking to build a startup. So what's your take on the difference between these two?
I have a huge respect for Dhanda, first of all. I think, a great business can build a great brand, right? So a business or, the fundamentals of the business are extremely important for any organization to survive, thrive, and so on, right? Now let's talk about brand. What is a brand? Coincidentally, I met a small town entrepreneur recently, and he runs successful businesses, couple of hundreds of crores. And when I met him, he said that, I have a wish, and he spoke to me in Hindi. He said that, yaar, dhanda bahut bana liya, brand banana hai.
Interesting.
So brand seems to be like this buzzword that everybody is talking about. But if you fundamentally look at the definition of what is a brand is a sum total of perceptions, right?
Okay.
And it's a very interesting word because brands are not built on reality. They're actually built on perceptions. Perceptions by virtue means that what someone thinks about you, right? So if brands are sum total of perceptions, it is no longer now restricted to your advertising, your marketing. It's also about how your customer care person talks to me, how you're packaging your products, how sustainable are you, even how you're treating your employees. Are you responsible to your communities and so on, right? So that is the overall definition of brand. Now, it can operate at multiple levels. So for example, I come from a small town, and if there is a famous hospital there, which is an independent hospital, but if someone was to recommend me that hospital and they'll say, yaar, acha hospital hai, good doctors hai, that's a brand. And then there is at a pan-India, global level brands where, for example, you say Tata in India, Tata is all about trust, right? So what do you stand for in consumers' mind? The scales might be different. But often, I think the fundamentals of a good business are always important. I just think that the seamlessness, and I think there is a very interesting thing that Jeff Bezos said, and I probably won't recollect the quote exactly, but when you're looking at future, when you're looking at things, people often ask that what are the things that are likely to change? But what people don't notice is that what is that core that's unlikely to change, because that's where you can build a solid business.
Makes sense.
There will never be a time, he says, that where people will not look for more choices, where people will not look for better prices and faster deliveries.
That out of the way, Gurudev, I wanted to do a small and fun exercise. I thought, while we have young 25-year-olds watching this, the idea is to cater to these people who are aspiring entrepreneurs or want to build their brand sometime in the future, or even those people who want to work for a brand, right?
Sure.
So we're catering to them, we're talking to them in this entire podcast. So I thought, between the both of us, let's do a small exercise and go through the process of building a brand.
Okay.
We can choose a product, let's say, for example, shoes. Let's build a shoe company together. We'll talk through, how, you source the product to how you eventually sell it to someone, and what do you do after the person has gotten that shoe. So I think it'll be a fun exercise. We'll keep it absolutely open and, chill.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's give it a shot. So I'll ask you a few questions first, right? One, if I want to start a shoe brand, of course, there's a sneaker culture out there, everything else is going on. And people want good sneakers, but they also cannot afford a Nike Jordans. Everyone cannot do that. So I do want a sneaker, but I do want it at a cheaper price. So one, if I'm building a brand in the sneaker space, how do I once source that product, to begin with? Brand building comes later. I need a product first, right?
Yeah, fundamentally I'm in a bit of a kind of a dilemma because I don't know whether this is a great space to build a business in India.
Okay.
And this is an important thing because that's why I wanted to talk through the example. So if you look at the mapping of the products
Hmm.
by price, by whatever. So you have the Adidas, Nikes, the global kind of standards. Then you have specialists like Essex and all of them, which are more about, like for example, if I run, I would choose an Essex.
Yeah.
Then you have brands which are also kind of Indian, like you have Neiman's, I think, which is like affordable,
Yes. Eco-friendly as well.
eco-friendly, a kind of Allbirds kind of thing in India, right? If you've seen the Allbirds case study, so it's almost like Allbirds of India. Then there's a very interesting thing which Decathlon does,
Hmm.
where you won't know the brands per se, you will not recollect, but you know Decathlon as a store brand, and just purely by the stature of the store and the association with sport. So that is also affordable shoes which people are using for their everyday performance or activities and so on, right? So it's, for me, it looks like quite a cluttered space, honestly.
Okay.
So what's the cut is what I'm thinking. What's the cut is what I'm, so that's the first thing I'll think even before sourcing.
Hmm.
And like we are right now simulating this whole idea of building a business. So as a founder, the thing that you need to start even before you sourcing is that if I am going to launch in this category, what is my license to win going to be?
Hmm.
What's my license to win? So Neiman's license to win probably is that a kind of a fresh Indian alternative, good quality, sustainable sourcing, sustainable materials, also affordable. So what is the vacant space that you see? I want to ask you, if you're a young entrepreneur, want to start and you have come to me for help, is that what is that white space that you see where you think there's a place for another brand?
I think, so I recently purchased shoes and I, got a Comet pair of shoes, a Comet company. So what I realized is Comet's designs are very trendy, modern, etc. and very similar to how a Nike design would be like. But I don't see too many brands doing that. For my taste specifically, and I could be very skewed in my response, but for my taste specifically, I couldn't find an alternative to Comet. Now Comet of course comes with a certain price, comes with a certain brand tag, but I see a big white space in that very category, that you're building a Nike design equivalent, but in a different price category. So that, in my opinion, is a big white space that one could build in.
Okay. For me, like again, kind of pushing you back, and that's our role, right? People often think that the role of a consultant is to give you answers, whereas I think the real role of a consultant is to ask you right questions.
Absolutely.
Right. Design is very subjective, right? When you see design, you don't see it in isolation. Let me kind of bring back a very interesting case study of, I see some of the crew members, I think, wearing Birkenstocks, right?
Yeah.
So Birkenstocks is like a really old, probably more than a century old, couple of centuries old brand. Actually were perceived to be very ugly. If you've seen Office, how many of you have seen Office? So there's Dwight Schrute, who is this character who is quite an oddball. There's a joke that he wears Birkenstocks and he's really, so it's almost like an oddball's choice, someone who is not really fashionable and all. But how they've reinvented themselves now, and I go to some of these happening places, out of 10, like 5 to 6 out of 10 people I'll see wearing Birkenstocks.
100%. I own one as well for the same reason.
So it's a so you don't see design just as design, but you see in the context of the brand, right? So it's a very, for example, you can have obnoxious designs under great brands and they will have a cult following.
Crocs is another example.
Crocs is a classic example also, right? Matlab, honestly, they look ugly. I think they're easy to maintain, but I don't know whether there's any study that says that they're actually ergonomically good or not. I would actually think that they might not be even good for you ergonomically.
So the entire deal with Crocs, at least from what I've read, is that they help your feet, spread wide enough and not really push them close to each other. So that's their entire game.
So that's the thing I'm asking. So just to say that design in isolation, I don't know whether in shoes that works. Though I have a counter example of Mokobara.
Yes.
So I carry a Mokobara bag, all my luggage. So because that category, the incumbents didn't do anything with, good design. Honestly, all of that looked like a very serious business-like,
Yes.
and also fairly expensive. So Mokawara is like a fresh breath of air, and the design is very perceivable, and they've done a great job in terms of when telling the story and
Absolutely.
the store experience and so on, right? So coming back to the experience, I think we need to find a real cut on what is our license to win,
Okay.
right? In terms of sneakers or in terms of footwear.
Right.
I would rather say that if you look at leather shoes, professional leather shoes, what are some of the top of mind brands that come to your mind?
I don't know, Hush Puppies?
Maybe. Or the brands that come to your mind not be of the caliber of the league of Nikes and Adidas. Talking about Nike, Adidas and all of that, like you're wearing a US Polo, right? Van Heusen, all of them have their own range of sneakers, right? So people are looking at anything that's aesthetically pleasing and picking up. So it's already a crowded market. So coming back to the question of let's build a business, I think the first thing that you need to figure out is that what is my license to win? What is my cut, which is different from, what others are offering?
100%. Now, okay, so now that we've established, say, for example, hypothetically, we're building a formal shoe company, let's say, for example. Now, I'm a young entrepreneur who's decided I want to do this. And, I want to hire BusyBeeBrands, but I know it's very expensive and I can't afford it. I'm not funded. I don't have too much money. What is a low-cost alternative I can look at to really understand the market a little better? I mean, I want to do a ground-level reality check to just validate my thesis. How do I do that?
I think branding is almost like a black box, and we have to blame the consultants to make it sound very jargonish, throwing frameworks. I don't even think that someone needs to do an MBA to be a good brand builder. Absolutely. And me being a consultant, I'm being very vocal about it. What you need is a combination of curiosity, right, and common sense.
Interesting.
Unfortunately, a lot of us complicate things, and branding, the more simple you are and more driven you are by first principles and more commonsensical, it is actually much, much better. So just to answer your point, I think talk to people who can be your potential audience, right? What are they wearing? People in your circle who are friends or whatever, what are they wearing? What are the different brands? What are the occasions where they wear formal versus sneakers? What is the kind of budget that they generally spend? How often do they change their shoes? Where do they buy it? Online, offline, multi-brand, exclusive. One thing, and which is not even young entrepreneurs, even the ones which are well funded, do is this bias that you only talk to people like you.
100%.
And when you're in a city like Bangalore, you're almost in a bubble where everybody is building something. So I will praise you, you praise me. I will buy your stuff, you buy my stuff. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Talk to people who are unlike you, who are outside of your circle, right? Because your brand is not just catering to, I'm assuming one wants to build a brand, it has to cater to a wider audience. So kindly talk to lots of different kinds of people.
But how do I do that? Say, LinkedIn is of course one option, but I don't have a big social circle. I'm not an extrovert person. How do I go and talk to people? Do I catch them on the road? Do I text them on LinkedIn? What do I do? How do I catch people?
So a lot of ways. For example, research sounds like such a formal thing. Even on commissioned researchers, one is we talk to database. We don't go and recruit from outside generally or use a recruiting agency because then generally they get someone, they coach them, and it's the research is not pure. So if I were to work with say Zerodha, I'll ask for your consumer cohorts and help me set up those calls.
Interesting.
But more importantly, for example, shoes is not like rocket science. If you're building something to send people to Mars, you'll have difficulty in finding people who can afford it. Every other person is wearing shoes. In your friend circle, everyone has a use case. And then friends of friends, right? Snowballing, that's what we do. So you talk to me and say, Guru, I love the conversation. Can you recommend me someone else who is as passionate about shoes or who can talk to me about shoes? So the recommendation goes to me. So you use all these tricks or reach out to, in every research, talking to consumer cohort, also talking to experts. So for example, someone who's a brand manager, say at Nike, Adidas, Decathlon, reach out to them on LinkedIn, write to them, and probably they will respond to you. And I'll tell you a very interesting story, right? What can social media actually do? This is 2008, 9, I won't remember the time. And Aamir Khan used to write a blog.
Okay.
And Aamir had written a blog, and I'm a Bollywood fanatic, and I actually didn't like this movie Gajini, right? And I had written that, why the hell did you do this movie?
Okay.
Right, to prove the other Khans that you can beat them at their game, because the quality of movie that I have kind of associate, or we associate with you, is very, very different kind of movie, though it might be a commercial hit, but I just didn't like it, and so on or whatever. And he had casually written that I would like to meet some people in Bangalore. He was shooting for 3 Idiots, and I just left this message on the blog, forgot about it. I said, of course, would love to meet and all of that, and on the message itself, and I forgot. I took a flight to Hyderabad. I land, and there were missed calls, and I'm just getting out, and someone calls me, and she says that I'm part of Aamir Khan's team. I cut the phone. I'm thinking, like, what the hell? This is not the time to spam. And then she calls me again, and she tells me, no, I am actually part of Aamir's team, and he's shooting. He's wanting to meet few people who read his blog and whatever, and he wants to meet you in Bangalore, and I am campus.
Wow. Okay.
So I actually cancelled my work trip, came back, and I met him, and he spent with 10 of us around 90 minutes. Talking about movies, talking about what worked, what didn't work, what are his plans. It was phenomenal. Also, the power of social media, right? The access that you
these
have.
These are not even videos, these are just blogs.
This was blog.
And back in
2008,
2009,
9, I'm not sure what exact year. You can probably trace it back to the release of 3 Idiots. But just the sheer power of, reaching out to someone.
Interesting, very interesting. No, so awesome. So, back to the brand building story that we're going on. So now we know what we're doing. We're building a leather shoe company or a formal shoe company.
Yeah.
We know how to do our market research. We're going to reach out to people on through our friend circle, second level connections, through our families, friends, etc.
And reach out to retailers who are selling this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yes, that's out of the way. Yeah. Now you already spoke about social media and the power. So let's get to that. How do you leverage today's new generation media? Could be social media, could be any other form of media, to now tell that story that you're trying to build. So now you've done your market research, you know what the problem is, and you want to build a brand around the story that you identified as a problem. How do you tell that story, and how do you leverage today's media in order to tell that story more effectively? I think Mokobar has done that really well. So how can we do this here?
So if I want to fight you, I'll not fight on your strengths, I will fight on your weakness, right?
100%.
So that's the thing about challengers and established incumbents, right? It's a David versus Goliath story. Can you outspend a big player? You cannot, right? But what can you do is that you can tell your story in a way that the big player cannot tell it, in a very authentic, personal way.
Interesting.
Who doesn't cheer for the underdog? And they're classic examples, right? I love the way Shashank is building Whole Truth. He is the spokesperson. He is the personal brand. He is even the face of the brand in some advertising.
Totally.
And today, let's talk. So Mamaearth is, of course, a big company, IPO and everything. But if you look at the story of Ghazal and Varun in the initial years, it was a very personal story of them kind of not happy with the available personal care or baby care products that were available, and creating something for their own child. It's a very, very personal story that resonates deeply for every young parent, right? So this is the strength. Why are you doing it? What are you trying to do? What are the challenges that you're facing? Even asking for help, asking for opinion. I think everybody loves that authenticity, and they would want to help you in whatever way they can. And
but how do you establish trust? For example, I don't have a credible background. I don't come from a big brand background, etc. I also don't come from a great college where my college's brand will really do the talking for me. So if I go and talk to people or tell a story, how and in considering the world is full of people lying, full of people trying to pull off scams, etc. Especially on social media. And we all know the influencer story, and I'm talking about the the bad cops there. But how do I, in that market, how do I establish a good boy or a good girl credibility by saying that, okay, I am telling a story, but I'm not talking about fluff, I mean it.
So first thing is, like, don't burden yourself trying to be a good boy or a good girl, right? It's okay to be rough around the edges, and there is a certain sense of beauty in the initial phases, even in imperfection, right? Unfortunately, if you look at social media today, it's all about see, I have done this, I have bought this, I have been promoted. There are very few people who authentically talk about their struggles also, their vulnerabilities also. So the starting point should not be that how do I come across as a good boy or whatever, but how do I really communicate what I'm feeling or what I'm grappling with right now. And Warren Buffett, I think, says is that compounding is the eighth wonder in the world. I think what we don't realize is compounding also is applicable to your reputation.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
In the sense, when you consistently kind of tell your story in an authentic way, and I am not able to see the difference between what you say versus what you do, I think I'll start to trust you.
So builds over time.
I don't trust a Shashank because he is like from a great college. I don't even remember where he's from. I trust him because he's told me a solid story. And let's come back to like Nitin's and Nikhil's story on Zerodha. Right? Do they come from the best of the pedigree? Have they spent like crores of money sponsoring IPLs and all? But look at so many youngsters looking at them. It's a journey over a period of time. It's not an overnight success. It's a
100%.
decades-long journey where they've earned it. So it's a big misnomer thinking that if I'm not from this college, if I'm not funded, matlab Zerodha almost like is a counterintuitive to every formula of success of playbook that you talk, right? They're not funded, they're bootstrapped.
Yeah.
Founders are not from great IITs, IIMs or whatever, right? They come from like absolutely regular pedigree, and they're actually in a category which is so trust heavy. You're trusting someone with your monies, right? Yeah. So if they have done it, why can't one do it, right?
No, 100%. And I don't know if the viewers know this, but I work for Zerodha. That's my full-time job. So I very closely get to interact with Nitin and, completely agree. So, since I talk to Nitin and look at Nitin every day, probably I don't see that happening. But, when I see an external person looking at Nitin, I'm like, shit, okay, I realize where I am today and who I am talking to. So I do realize and I do see that entire journey and how people perceive these two people as personal brands or personal people who they can really look up to.
Absolutely.
And, recently we did this 01 summit event. I think you were also around. I saw how younger folks, colleges or just out of college, etc., they were just queuing up, and there was, at least 100, 200 people lying just to say hi to a Nitin or Nikhil or even Kailash for that matter. So absolutely crazy, so I completely understand.
So I have had the privilege to work with, of course, Nitin, and they say that don't meet your heroes, sometimes they can be disappointing.
Nitin says that a lot.
He's a rare exception where you meet him and, your respect and love for him is almost like grows even more.
100%.
So I think it's authenticity. What works for Nitin is the authenticity, right? So you won't see a difference between what he's saying on a public forum versus how he is in person.
Yeah, no, and I can assure, I've been with him offline enough and seen Zerodha up close now for a year or so. And I know for a fact that social media Nitin and the in-office Nitin, who's not on camera, who's not in front of people, is exactly the same. So yeah, that's phenomenal, So I completely agree with you and completely understand where you're coming from when you talk about this. But yeah, awesome. Anyway, so we'll come back to our building the shoe brand. So just to recap, we've understood that we're building a leather shoe or a formal shoe company. We know where to do our market research from. We've understood the story that we want to tell to people. We now know how to talk to people about that story. The idea is to be authentic. Now comes the holy grail of everything. How do you sell it? What do you do in order to make people actually buy your product? Of course, a part of it is telling the story, and people will automatically buy it. But what more can I do as an entrepreneur to be able to sell my product?
So you will, the audience has to know that this is absolutely impromptu and we are just kind of 100%. Playing it out, but you will approach a consulting project in a different way. But I'm just putting myself in a young person's shoes and I'm saying that these are, handmade, beautifully crafted. I'll probably think of a great name which does justice to this craftsmanship. And because I'm playing at the premium end, I will actually make scarcity a kind of a marketing thing. That we are only making these many pairs. So, that is how I would build it. Rather than flooding the market with it, so I'll build it very well. So it works for me because I don't have to spend so much on inventory. And also it builds a certain level of aspiration because you're making it exclusive and, very scarce. Yeah.
Very similar to how all the OnePlus and other phone companies started out with flash sales.
Yeah, a lot of premium brands also started that way, right? You have this thing called create, build, expand. So you create this and kind of seed it with an absolute opinion leaders or people who really matter and others look up to. Then you start going to the next level and then eventually you expand, right? Yeah.
I think create, build, expand, when you said that, I got reminded of this watch that I wear. It's called Whoop.
Oh,
and I showed it up to the camera, so I'm not sponsored, of course. But very interesting story. I think they started with all these sports people that everyone looks up to. Indian, international, everybody. You have a Ronaldo wearing it, you have the folks like Virat Kohli wearing it. Of course, they're on TV all day. People look up to them. People really look up to them for fitness also. And since this is the fitness tracker, I see how now everybody, including the likes of people like me who are not really fitness, I'm not a professional fitness, right? Or into professional sport for that matter. I still wear this.
Absolutely. I am looking to get one for myself as well.
Exactly. So all of us, probably, even if we don't have it, we probably heard of it in some shape or form, right? Interestingly, I wrote a LinkedIn post 6-7 months back and it just blew up. So that made me realize how interested people, and by the way, the LinkedIn post spoke about what band Virat Kohli was wearing. So that basically tells you how so many people are so curious about what fitness tracker Virat Kohli is using. As simple as that.
Absolutely.
So I think Whoop's done that really well. They started with thought leaders. They're now in the next segment of consumers, and maybe
you will have a natural pull, right? Matlab, when you look at your icon wearing something,
100%,
and if you can afford it, probably you cannot afford the car that Virat is driving, but you can definitely afford a band that Virat is wearing.
Absolutely.
So you will have that market pull.
Absolutely. So. And to add to the credit here, it's not even available. I mean, until very recently, it was not even available in India.
Absolutely.
So most of the people I know who own a Whoop actually imported it from outside India, which is phenomenal, right? Absolutely. Because in a very, as we term it, price-sensitive India, we are actually importing things from outside India and buying things on a subscription basis, which is phenomenal.
And also this brings to, me to another interesting thing of segmentation.
Okay.
So let's look at sports watch as a category. Right?
Okay.
There is this set of people who are wearing it because they genuinely need to track everything. They're absolutely obsessed about every metric, the fitness. And there is another set of people who are not using it like that, but probably in one of the activities that they're doing, maybe the heart rate, sleep, gym, running.
Yeah.
But there's also a huge set of people who wear it as a fashion accessory, who just want to do signaling that, I can afford a great brand, I am in know of what is happening, and I also want to come across as someone who's conscious about my health.
100%.
Every category will have these kind of segments.
100%.
Right? So that's how you need to figure out who are these absolute opinion leaders, and can I create a brand with them, the others, and build aspiration for others. So if I were to do shoes like exclusive, handcrafted, premium, great name, Karigari or something, and then create exclusivity and, almost like a scarcity around the brand.
Very interesting, very interesting. So, okay, so now we've sold the product, we've understood how to sort of sell the product and what to do to sell the product. Talk me through the post-purchase journey. Now, I am a consumer of your product, I am wearing your shoes, I go to a party. As a brand, does your story end here? Does your involvement end there? Or do you still have a part to play? What do you do after that?
So, we talked about the band that you're wearing, that Whoop, right? So, it has sold to some of these players, but they're sporting it. And that is creating demand. Whether they're sporting it because they're paid to do it or not, I won't know. I don't think so. So, I think brand's journey doesn't, as I said, the definition of brand is a sum total of experiences. And a very important part is post-purchase. Very, very important part of post-purchase, right? And in most cases where consumers feel like this is a best kept secret that I have discovered, not everybody knows it. You have a certain joy and a badging value in telling the world about it. That boss, you don't know it. Let me tell you, this is great and I recommend it. So you become an evangelist. Right?
Interesting. And people do take recommendations.
You see that happening, like again, going back to Whole Truth, you see that, people talking about the packaging, people talking about the copy and so on. I recently posted on Akshay Kalpa, which is one of my favorite brands in terms of, because I happen to know the founder, and I know how committed he is towards the cause of, purity and, sustainability and so on. So when I ordered vegetables from them, they came in leaves, packed in leaves, right?
Okay.
And I felt it was so nice. There's no plastic, no paper, nothing. It felt fresh, natural. I took a picture, wrote about it on LinkedIn.
100%.
And I know 5 people in my circle who started ordering from Akshakalpa. So consumers becoming evangelists. So every part of so it doesn't stop at just selling. It doesn't stop at just selling.
No, 100%. That reminds me of this story by Pant Project, right? So there's this brand called Pant Project which sells customized tailor-made pants for you. So I, wanted to give it a shot. I was looking at a lot of ads, so I thought might as well give it a shot. So the packaging, otherwise you'd see a pant in like a, a paper bag or a polythene bag or something. They gave it to me in a nicely crafted box, which had their branding, etc. But what was cooler is inside they had a booklet with all materials that they have. You know how in those tailoring shops
absolutely.
they show you a booklet of materials?
Yeah.
They give that with all their orders. They give you a measuring tape so that you can ensure and trust that the measurements that you've given to them are the measurements that are there on the pant.
Absolutely.
You get a measuring tape and a book for free along with it. So tomorrow I am very excited and very interested to look at that material, go back to the website and say, okay, same measurements, make this pant for me.
Absolutely.
So it's pretty crazy how brands can really think about different ways to do this.
Come to think of it, this is thoughtfulness. And you don't need a lot of money to be thoughtful. You need empathy to be thoughtful.
Agreed.
Right. And a lot of these new age brands are very, very thoughtful in the way that they, think about your experience. Right. So thoughtfulness is not a function of how much money you raise. Thoughtfulness is a function of how much do you really care about the consumers and how you're thinking through the whole journey. Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's phenomenal. So I think, this specific exercise was pretty fruitful. So, I'll quickly summarize whatever we've done. We figured out the market size in terms of, what is the problem. Where to play, right? So I want to start up, but I don't know where to start up. I know I want to build a shoe company. I'm interested in that space. Maybe I have a background. Maybe I'm just curious. But I don't know what exactly to do in shoes. So we took a look at, what really to do, how to think about it. We went on and understood a deeper lens of how to understand our consumers a little better without, spending too much money. We can talk to our friends of friends, family, stakeholders, manufacturers, and other things like those. We also then spoke about how we can utilize media and, just talk to people and tell that story that we've identified and tell that effectively. And, how do you sell it? And then, of course, how do you be empathetic towards that person even after your purchase? So how do you ensure they come back to you or they recommend their friends to buy from you again?
True.
So wonderful. I think this was pretty useful, and I hope the viewers would also find use in this. Anyway, moving on, Gurudev, we've spoken about the good parts of brands so far. Tell me, in your experience, and you've got about 20 years of experience, tell me what are some of the wrong things people think about a brand, in terms of myths or wrong perceptions that people have about a brand per se?
Yeah, I think very, very interesting question, right? First thing is that people think that brand building is just the domain of companies, organizations which are, flush with cash, which is not true.
Okay.
Right. In fact, it is not true because the definition of brand building itself is not just about advertising. Consumers are not just evaluating you by your advertising and communication. Consumers are evaluating you by 100 other things, by ratings, by reviews, by what their friends are saying, by what your employees are saying, by how you're treating your vendors. Are you really responsible towards your community or not? There's so many other aspects, right? So I think brand thinking, I keep saying this, is almost like an insurance. You don't wait for an accident to happen to take an insurance. You take it, so that you are able to tide over a difficult time, right? Also, I have a 14-year-old, right? So I've realized that to instill good habits, you have to start early.
100%.
So after a certain age, it's very, very difficult to kind of instill those values. Similarly, when you're building a brand, I think the discipline around it, the thinking around it should happen from day one. So don't confuse brand building with brand thinking, right? So what we see is this part that's visible where a lot of, fancy campaigns, advertising, but it's a lot more than that. The second big myth that happens is that people or organizations think that brand building is prerogative of marketing and brand teams, which is absolutely wrong.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that if I were to say a brand, any brand's name, a really powerful brand will stand for something in your mind, right? Let's talk about Domino's as an example. Domino's means pizzas in 30 minutes. Are we there?
100%.
So when the organization or the brand is about offering pizzas in 30 minutes, every decision that you take in the organization, from the vehicles of the delivery person, how you fit them, from your packaging to your store design, even to your menu, you'll have to figure out of how or what are the things that you'll do that you can deliver within 30 minutes.
Interesting.
Right? Brands are that. So brands are this filter or this thing that you want to kind of optimize on, double down on, and the entire organization has to rally behind it. Gone are the days where like I am a 80s kid, I'm 42, and there was a time when there was Mahabharata and Ramayana and Chitrahar on TV. Entire family would converge, see one screen, one channel, and there were breaks and there were ads and you would consume those ads. There was no social media. I personally think that when I look back at that time, that I wish I was a brand manager at that time, because probably all you had to do was to tell a great story.
100%.
But it has changed so much. Media is fragmented. Consumers are distracted. Low attention spans. There is no, they feel equally, if not more powerful than the brands. You kind of have a problem with a brand, you'll go on Twitter, write something nasty. You go on LinkedIn, write something. You leave a bad review. Consumers don't feel helpless any longer. So it is not what you say, it is what you do and demonstrate. That's what brands are. So entire organization has to agree on what is the brand standing for and has to optimize and deliver on that.
Very interesting.
2 myths. So first myth I said is that it's not a just advertising, communication, it's everything. Second is that it's not just for people who have money, organization, it's for everyone.
For everyone.
And third thing is that less is more in brand thinking, and I keep telling people the same thing, that as a brand builder, you want to communicate everything about your brand, right? But you have to understand the reality of the consumer, that there is so much cognitive overload, there's so much information, he's already hooked to 3 screens, laptop, phones, TV, and so many other things happening, and brand is just like coincidental to his life. So at most, and this advertising legend Morris Sachi, I think, says that the best of the brands actually own like one single thing in consumers' mind. So if I were to give you 30 seconds to make a TV ad, please don't flood it with we offer this, this, and also this. Look at the hierarchy of needs and try to appropriate that one single thing that is most important for the consumer, and that's not kind of taken by the competitor.
So in a nutshell, what I understand is, long story short, do not overcomplicate things.
Absolutely.
Do not overthink it.
Common sense.
Keep it very simple. Keep it to one specific thing that you can crack. Keep it to one problem, and later, once you've built a certain following, certain brand, etc., then expand your arms and legs.
Yeah, also, so let's look at Maggi as an example, right? Maggi came into India, noodles was not very well known at that time. I won't remember the year, but probably sometime in 80s, maybe 80s, 90s, I don't know. But noodles was not common. This whole idea of something that you ready to cook, whatever, you do this last minute prep and ready to it, I don't think that was a category that was established. There's this whole Western concept of noodles. So there were so many things that the brand could have communicated. This is a novelty, this is interesting thing, this is new, whatever. But brand was built on a solid insight that when kids come back from that play, between the 2 meals, they are so hungry and they're impatient.
Yeah.
And mother doesn't want to feed them. Mothers don't want to feed them something out of just open it and like a bhujia or a packaged stuff. They want to feel like they've done something, or they've cooked it for them, they prepared it for them, and they can also fortify it with vegetables and other things, right? That's how the dominant positioning.
Very
and
interesting.
So many years, right? The dominant in our minds is also about nostalgia, our growing up, college, whatever. But the premise is dominant.
Even though none of us have made Maggi in 2 minutes ever.
Right? So that's the sharpness. Even, that's the sharpness. Now, 30 minutes of home delivery of Domino's, it's still you in your mind, 30 minutes mein to aa jayega Domino's. It's not like Domino's doesn't say that we offer you the best tasting pizza in the country,
100%.
in the city.
But I can trust it.
You can trust it that when there is no maid, when it is raining, when unexpected guests arrive, and you're in a mood to have something quick, fast, hot, it's easy to order.
So in fact, this reminds me of a small advertisement that I'd seen some time back. So Paresh Rawal, the actor, so he features in a Domino's. This is, I think, around
iconic
the time.
one.
Correct.
Yeah.
So correct. So So interestingly, so what happened, just for the viewers, is Paresh Rawal gets to know that Domino's is ordering a 30-minute. Domino's is offering a 30-minute free offer. So he's like, it's raining outside. There's a bad traffic jam. So let me order a Domino's and get it for free.
Yeah.
And the Domino's guy actually arrives within 30 minutes or so, and he's like, तुमको late आने की बीमारी, तुमको जल्दी आने की बीमारी है क्या?
True. And that's an iconic ad, because on one end you have someone who is really, the appearance or whatever, the way he was portrayed, was stingy guy who was a massive deal seeker, and the context is that it's raining, traffic jam, so the odds are against, and they still deliver it, right? In fact, a lot of people ordered Domino's. It became a huge driver for trials because people couldn't believe, in a cultural context where ISTs, Indians are not really known for being punctual, saying that 30 minutes of free was such a big incentive for people to try.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I used to be in school at that point in time. So my entire fascination was, how do you get a free pizza? So my entire goal was to eventually get a free pizza one day. So I back in the day, I used to keep fighting with the Domino's people, saying 1 minute late ho gaya, 2 minutes late ho gaya.
Absolutely.
So that was an entire fascination, right? And it made me order Domino's so much that now I've built such a brand loyalty with that brand, that today, if it's raining or there's some problem, or I'm just super hungry and I really need food and I can't trust anyone else, I end up ordering Domino's, even though I know it's not the most healthy option for me. So that's just, beyond all odds. It just makes me...
While on that, I think I want to make an interesting point here for young founders also, because when people talk about brands, even the really well-funded organizations and all of that, everybody talks about making an emotional connection, emotional claim, emotional ad. But the examples that we spoke about, Maggi is 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Domino's is 30 minutes. They're absolutely functional.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is that the trust is one of the most important emotions that you can own, and trust, you can own that emotional thing when you consistently deliver on your promise.
But tell me this now, I'm curious. Maggi does not get ready in 2 minutes. Like all of us know that, right? All of
2 minutes is a proxy for that. It's the fastest thing that you can prepare.
I understand. But how does a Maggi still retain its trust when it's not really a 2 minute in reality? So for example, if I cook Maggi, I know it's not getting prepared in 2 minutes. But Domino's, I know, will deliver actually in 30 minutes. So how do I still retain that loyalty with Maggi? 2
minutes is almost like a proxy to say this is the fastest thing that you can prepare. Also, we have to kind of respect the intelligence of the consumers, right? Consumers know that 30 minutes of free, matlab, it's by the clock. 2 minutes, literally, consumer doesn't take it as 2 minutes. Consumers takes it as something that can happen fast. It's almost like 2 minutes mein ho jayega, right? So consumers know. So for example, you have advertising, some of them like a Happy Dent.
Okay.
Which won so many awards. So it's a setup in old times, like a palace.
Yeah.
And these guys who are like probably, working there, they all chew Happy Dent at night and they open up their mouths and they work almost like lambs, right? Yeah. Consumer is not like, they know what is exaggeration, what is a joke. So it's absolutely, so consumers are very intelligent.
Initially in the podcast, we spoke about how India is traditionally a country where we do a lot of dhanda or business per se. But nowadays, youngsters tend to not want to join their parents' business or their grandparents' business per se, because they think it's not cool, or they can't do anything out there, or they want to do something of their own. Probably they're leaving out a great opportunity there. But do you think somewhere it's to do with the coolness aspect of it, in terms of how a business is perceived as a brand in the minds of a consumer?
Yeah, so, one is, statistically, I don't know whether this is true or not. Like, for example, the media narrative versus reality is often very different. So if you look at in city like Bangalore, if you read the newspapers, if you read some of the blogs, you would kind of come to a conclusion that everybody today wants to start something of their own. Whereas when you work in education sector and when I traveled across engineering colleges, I think placements is still the single biggest thing that people are looking
100%,
for, right?
I agree.
So I also know of cases where the younger generation has joined the family business and kind of really took it to another level by infusing better practices and even brand thinking.
I mean, Mukesh Ambani is a classic example.
Classic example. There's so many of them,
Yeah,
right? Matlab where, you know, people, I think you spoke about myths about brand building. It's a myth that brands can be only built in exciting categories. I think that's a myth. In fact, the more boring the category, the better the chance that you have to build a brand. Matlab you will have to build a great brand because you will not have so many people looking at building a brand in that.
Interesting. I mean, Mokobara again.
Any
luggage.
category,
Who's
any
building in
category
luggage?
that you pick up, right? So I actually think that there is a very interesting opportunity to build brands in boring categories because a lot of them are ignoring them, saying that you're boring.
Tell me an example of a boring category that comes to your mind.
Example, okay, before one of the boring categories is like I you know just worked on this category recently on spectacles, and I have a newfound respect for lens cart, right? Who thought that prescription glasses can be fun? It was a chore. You went to the eye doctor, they prescribed, and you grudgingly went to a store, picked up something.
Yeah.
Lenscart through its journey has moved prescription glasses from something that you wear as a compulsion to something that you wear
For fun.
It has infused a lot of youthful vibrancy and fun into it.
Yeah.
It has almost made it a fashion statement. And I've spent a lot of time in Lenscart stores looking at how the audiences or consumers walk in and they're exploring the store. They're looking at the frames, they're picking up, they're trying out, and there is a certain sense of fun that they've infused in this category.
Yeah.
So it was a boring category. Like when I was growing up, I think I kind of postponed wearing specs for many years because you felt like, oh my God, this is, yaar, ye bhi karna padega. Now it is not like that. Right? So there are many categories that you can look around and you can find examples.
Interesting. But just talking a little further on the family business aspect. Now, it's assume I am a youngster who now wants to take over my dad's or granddad's business. What is something I should do in order to build a brand there? How do I look at building a brand? And we spoke about how Domino's, etc., has built all their systems around the single brand structure that they made. There is 30 minutes. But in this case, I already have a predefined structure, which is my family business, which says into exports or something on those lines. Now I want to get into it and build a brand out of it. So how do I go about doing that?
See, I think there's a kind of a similarity between a younger generation joining a family business, wanting to be a part of it, or say a brand manager joining a different company.
Okay.
In both the cases, I think the biggest problem is that people don't often respect the work that has happened so far. They're in such an urgency to leave their mark and to change things and to say that I have done this and this is my doing. I think they kind of almost disrespect the years and decades of work that has gone behind it.
Interesting.
Right? So that's, I think, the first thing more than anything else, that understand the realities and the context and under which the business has been built and the journey so far. What are the strengths, right? Talk to your consumers, talk to people, or talk to your vendors. Understand what they value you for, your business for, right? Is it relationships? Is it quality? Is it whatever that is? And because very interesting question is that you cannot manufacture a brand ethos.
Okay.
It has to exist in the DNA of the business. You have to bring it out and you have to own it.
Okay.
Right. Unless you're starting from a scratch and you're saying this is what I want to do and this is what I want to stand for, and you have the luxury. But ultimately, when I consult like brands that are already in the business, sizable brands, right? It's not a creative exercise. That's the biggest myth. Because then you have the choice to pick up fancy words, fancy territories and say that I can be you cannot be. I will have to find, talking to your consumers and stakeholders, what are the best parts of you? And what is that part that's relevant to the consumer, that's not owned by the competition, and that you can credibly own? That is brand building.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
So it's not superficial. You have to deep dive and you have to figure out what is the core. And is that core relevant to my consumer? Is that core something that's not occupied by the competition? And can I own that?
That's an interesting insight.
Yeah.
That's an interesting insight. Awesome. So, okay. So now again, I'm a youngster looking at learning how to build a brand or learning how branding works per se. What are my best ways to learn it? Do you have any book recommendations, video recommendations, podcasts, or any people who I can follow per se? Who do you look up to?
I look up to a lot of people, not essentially like brand domain specialists or something, but there's so many people that you can look up to. As I said, is that it is multidisciplinary, right? You can learn from so many things. It's surprising that just by reading newspaper every single day, you'll be probably among the top 1% of people who read anything.
Interesting.
All of us are busy in our phones, and there is this perceived notion that we are busy because our screens are taking away our time. But it's actually sad that I meet so many young people and so few of them actually read even 10 pages a day. So just be curious. Have your eyes and ears open around what is happening around you. As I said, branding is very commonsensical. Start with a newspaper, a business like an Economic Times, Mint, any of that. There's some amazing podcasts.
Yeah.
Like every day I walk for an hour in the morning, I kind of make a list of podcasts that I want to listen to. It can be around business, brands, personal finance, personal development, anything, right? Habit stacking and so on. And there's some like really great books. My problem with brand books are they're very theoretical. I would rather study on consumer behavior, right? And I would study on like different things, on different subjects. Like for example, I would study like my reading I've divided into personal development, professional development, and as a brand builder, one of the most important traits that you need to have is curiosity. So if something is happening, something is buzzing, something people are talking about, you cannot say that I don't care. Like if there is a wave of crypto, you need to understand what it is about. If there is AI, everybody is talking about, you need to kind of research around it, right? If there is Ambani's marriage that's happening, that's trending, that's talk of the town, you need to kind of figure out. And I'll tell you this, and this is not about the youngsters per se, but even the extremely qualified brand managers, they are like catering to a certain audience. Say you're catering to pan-India audience, but you are living in your own bubble. You almost take a certain pride in saying that, oh, I just watch Netflix. I just watch this English series and I only listen to this music. And you are condescending to say a Big Boss, an Indian Idol, but that's what your consumer is watching. If your consumer is watching that, you better watch it and figure out what is working for them.
100%.
Right? I have kind of worked with so many agencies. I struggle to find people who can write good Hindi. Right?
Yeah,
or who Hindi, because it's probably a commonly spoken language across country. But if you're struggling to find people who can express themselves in good Hindi, imagine the struggles when you go to someone who can express in Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, any of these languages. So a lot of that is happening. Right?
Oh, absolutely true. Yeah. Absolutely. But either way, I mean, if I'm a 25, 26-year-old, do you recommend anything that I could start with, in terms of understanding consumer behavior a little better, or business podcasts or business, any videos or whatever?
So what are your Indian podcasts that I listen to Mukesh Bansal's
Sparks.
I think Sparks. I like recently I had written about Sudha Murthy's episode. I loved it. Yes. I watched it with my family. Then I think now this has ended, but the Ken's First Principles, I think I like some of their episodes. I've also liked Shantanu Deshpande's Barber Shop, interesting episodes.
Yeah, I love that podcast.
Yeah, so that's one. Then I listened to Guy Raz, How I Built It, I think it's called. Very, very interesting episodes on global brands and so on.
Okay.
Lot of these, like anything that I want to kind of understand better, I get into it. And one way is to read a lot of books. So I kind of read quite a bit, but there are also books that I keep going back to. And everywhere I go, I recommend them to a lot of youngsters. For example, what has been a game changer for me is Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, to understand personal finances and your attitude towards money. Uh, Atomic Habits by James Clear for habit stacking, and generally how to cultivate good habit has had profound impact on me. And then there's a book called Rework by these guys who run Basecamp. It's very easy book, small chapters. Again, had like a deep impact on how I approach work. So a lot of these books I keep going back to.
Interesting. Awesome. So Gurudev, I think one last question for this show today. So far we've only spoken about entrepreneurship, and if I want to be an entrepreneur, what should I do, what should I look at, etc. I'm interested in branding, but maybe I don't want to be an entrepreneur for whatever reason. I want to take up a job either to learn for a few years, or I just want to take up a job for stability. What are some of the practices I should follow, number one? And what are some of the companies that are cool brands today that I could work with, where you think I could get great exposure and understand how things are working out?
Yeah, that's kind of not a very easy answer. I'll talk about the companies, right? So the big companies will help you think in a certain process. There's there are processes for everything. There's systemic way of thinking and so on, and there's a merit to that also, right? The planning and so for example, you have yearly plans, business plans. You're prepared much in advance. There is a process through which everything goes through. There's the advantages of learning that. But the smaller ones, there's an advantage that from what you want to do to what you see in market, it's very fast. You get a better chance at, like a lot of these big organizations, there's a clear guideline of what is that you can do, what is you can't do, because brands are very sacrosanct. So there is a merit to learning that kind of rigor, disciplined thinking, systemic thinking, but there's also an advantage of working with smaller, agile brands, because you almost become like one of the authors of the brand script, of the brand narrative, right? And it is like, I consider it a privilege if in a lifetime you're able to leave your mark on a brand. And we are living in this unprecedented times in India where their brands being, they're born every single day. And there's so many fascinating brands that are really taking shape. And I'm very bullish on some of these actually going, and becoming global brands. So if you get an opportunity to work one of those brands in early stage and play a role there, I think it's a phenomenal experience.
If I'm looking at a brand today, maybe name 3 brands I could look at.
I don't know whether, look at in terms of working, but 3 brands that I admire, I think it's an interesting question. In Indian context, I think Indigo.
Okay.
Lion's share of, market. Because
60%.
For me, a good brand is not very different from good business. Good business has to be baked into good brand. So Indigo is a classic. I love Indigo. Of course, the scale at which they're operating, they have a lot of these now complaints and so on, whatever. But on time, single-mindedly in a category where everybody said you're my guest, and cultural context of moving from trains to flights. Nobody thought about time as a positioning.
Very similar to the Domino story.
Yeah, so on time for a category like that, it was quite path-breaking. In fact, there's a new book, I think it's called Sky High. I've just finished it. Beautiful book on Indigo story. Everybody should actually read it. I love Lenskart, looking at that, and how they've picked up a category and then infused a youthfulness into that category, which was seen to be very clinical and boring. Also, execution is quite phenomenal, right? I've traveled to smaller towns in metros. You're never far from a Lenskart.
True.
Right. And to take, I don't know, I might be wrong on the numbers, but in organized retail, they have, I think, more than 40% market share.
Which is massive.
Huge, right? I love Maruti.
Okay, this is interesting.
They really understand Indians and make cars for Indians. They stood for mileage, the value for money. What I love about them is for years they've struggled to offer premium brand, premium variants.
Yes.
They never picked up. But they seem to have cracked it.
With Nexa.
You look at, Grand Vitara, you look at Brezza. And what is interesting for me is that if you look at the Indian car market, the best of the global brands are available in India, right? But still to keep that kind of be a leader still and far ahead of others, I think that's an incredible, you have to give it to them. So that's why I'm saying, so a lot of times we're all obsessed with the shiny new objects and, what is trending, what's happening, what people are talking about. But there's some amazing brands. Like I love Haldiram's as a brand.
Yeah.
Right? How much can you learn from that brand? And authentically Indian, but unashamedly very, very proud of what they are.
Yeah.
And doing phenomenal. So there's some phenomenal brands that exist in India. Yeah.
No, awesome. I think this show was very insightful, very useful, and I hope the audience finds it the same way. Your insights are a total gem, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this once again.
Thank you so much for calling me, and absolute pleasure. Yeah, absolute pleasure, and wishing you the best for this, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.